Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry, Arc 4, Chapter 2. It's your boy Karagol Gaming, and you know how we do things around here. That did not fit in the middle of that little intro, but it is what it is. That's what we're gonna rock with. Let's continue on. If you missed last episode, go ahead and peep it. Waking up in a cheap hotel in the city was by no means pleasant. I remembered even during the long camping trips we had during grade school, I wanted to get home quickly, counting out the days left on my fingers. Waking up this morning, I was somehow reminded of that. Was it a need to be with my wife when she gave birth? A particular type of homesickness? As a productive member of society, as a public servant bound to fulfill his duties, it was pathetic indeed. Those negative emotions faded as I downed my breakfast, which was surprisingly not half bad. The meeting with the informant that Oishi had provided would be tonight. Until then, I couldn't just be lazing around. Well, you could be, but... The Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was protesting the dam's construction in various ways. Okay. So he can't be the victim because in the beginning of the game, the victim who got chopped up, because in the beginning of the game, he was waiting for Oishi who had already retired, so that was in the future, right? So maybe the informant is the one who got chopped up. Well, it depends on who the informant is. Included in this was a strategy for improving public relations, which could be categorized into two major forms, combative and peaceful. In regards to the former, as an attempt to keep law enforcement in check, they appealed to the public's sympathy by highlighting the oppressive and inhumane tactics of the police and the brutality of the riot squads. The latter, peaceful route, stressed how precious the natural surroundings of Hinamizawa was, seeking people who would oppose the dam on environmental grounds. As part of that, the village of Hinamizawa had invited celebrated zoologists and botanists, as well as environmental groups to advertise the nature surrounding the town. According to the news, in recent years there had been a group calling itself Hinamizawa Nature Watching, setting up free sightseeing tours. I would have liked to have taken advantage of the opportunity, but when I called the village administrative offices, they responded that it was too late to put in an application for the tour, and they were still undecided as to when they would be doing another one. Bro, like, this sentence barely even fit in the message box, bro. Like, what? I hate you.
そうですか。次回の募集はありませんか。残念です。
あんた、環境保護団体さんですか？それとも雑誌さんの人？
いえ、個人です。
個人？観光ですかね？
Oh, they don't like outsiders, bro.
観光みたいなものです。美しい自然を写真に残すのが趣味なんで。
Tomitake-kun.
雑誌でとても貴重な自然が残っていると読んだので、楽しみにしていたのですが。
I knew there was an article that had something like that written in it, but I hadn't actually read it. Was this ad-lib lie not going to work? However, contrary to my expectations, the person I was speaking to laughed happily.
ならあんた、検査来なさい。村はちょいと慌ただしいけど、歓迎しますよ。
Yeah, hell no.
ぜひそうさせていただきます。ありがとうございます。
あんた、明日は何ですか？お車？もしそうだったら、先にナンバーを聞いておきますよ。台湾ないんですがね。
That was probably related to the checkpoints they had set up on the way to the village. If I didn't give them my license plate number, I would most likely be hindered in various ways. I thought about using the car I had borrowed from the prefecture, but I was lost on whether it was okay to tell them that plate number. If the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was behind this incident, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't be able to find out who I was. I had to play it safe, so I elected to refrain from using the car.
いえ、実は車ではないんです。バスか何かがあれば、それで行きたいのですが。
バスならありますよ。もうすぐ廃線になっちまうそうですがね。そんでいらっしゃい。沖宮の駅から出ますよ。
ありがとうございます。探してみることにします。
本当、いつ来ます？Hinamizawa-san, 初めて？
God damn, bro, 21 questions?
めての土地じゃいろいろとご不安でしょう。教えてくれりゃ誰か行かせていろいろご案内させますよ。
そんな。そこまでしていただくのは申し訳ないです。
気にせんでください。これも村の自然さ守るための PR なんですから。
Judging by what I saw at the checkpoint, the villagers were at the very least wary of outsiders. That's why, in order to move in and out of the village freely, I had to travel with somebody like Oishi or side with the dam protests. Having an interest in the natural environment surrounding the village tied into the peaceful type of PR that the village was trying to use. I was a bit against having a watchdog attached to me, but that might actually work out in my favor. The entire village was fired up about the dam protests, so I might be lucky enough to hear some of the especially candid opinions from the residents. Given that, there was no real reason for me to refuse their offer.
本当によろしいのでしょうか。でしたら本当に助かります。
After that, I was shown the bus schedule and directed to which bus I should get on. Somebody would come and meet me at the bus stop in the village. After showing me around a spot I would take an interest in, there was no doubt they would bring me somewhere like an anti-dam information center. Then, over a cup of tea, they would try to indoctrinate me into accepting their principles and beliefs. Well, if that was their aim, there would be a lot of freebies involved. The world is about give and take after all. I couldn't be going in a suit. I pulled some plain clothes out of my travel case and changed into something more casual. After that, after calming down by watching some local television, I left the hotel and set out for Okinomiya Station. The bus route that I was told would soon be discontinued certainly didn't look that way. There was more than enough trips on the schedule, and the number of passengers was by no means sparse. It was the main link to Okinomiya, the only town in the area. The types of passengers that stood out were older folk who didn't look like they could drive and housewives who didn't seem like they had a license. A lot of assuming going around here. If the area was submerged at the bottom of the lake, it wouldn't matter if there was a bus route. That's why it was going to be discontinued, in the unnatural scheme of things. I could catch a glimpse of the government's intent in cutting off their means of transportation to bully the village into emptying out sooner. It makes sense. According to the documents, talks between the Ministry of Construction and the locals broke down quite early. The government decided from the start to take an aggressive stance on the matter. It was like the fairy tale with the north wind and the sun trying to get the traveler to remove his cloak. Even their bullying had meaning to it. The reason why the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance resisted so violently was because the government was doing unseemly things like that. I was somebody who lived in Tokyo, so for a village or two out in the boonies like this to be submerged didn't seem like a big deal. But I guess for somebody who actually lived here, it would be a vitally huge problem. This route will be discounted at the end of this financial year. Thank you for your patronage up to this point. We look forward to your continued patronage on our other lines. Okinomiya Transportation. Gazing lazily at the notice of discounted service posted inside the bus, I counted down the number of stops until the designated one. Along the way, we passed through the checkpoint before without stopping. Okay. They knew what time the bus was coming, so they had opened up the barricade ahead of time. From here on out was enemy territory. My palms had at some point become coated in a thin film of sweat.
浮田水道前へお降りの方はいらっしゃいませんか?
I hurriedly pressed the stop request button as the designated stop was announced. For none of the numerous passengers to be getting off here meant that it must be quite a remote place. In actuality, the stop I got off at was so abnormally run down that I could tell it was barely used. As soon as I stepped out, an intense atmosphere completely different than the interior of the bus assailed my body. Right now, Oishi or Hondaya weren't beside me. Hondaya. That's right, at present, I was alone in the middle of enemy territory. My adversaries probably thought I was just an ordinary tourist, but that was nothing more than a ruse. But if by some mistake my true identity was to be exposed, it brought back the terrifying words I had heard at the prefectural office, that if somebody was attacked in Hinamizawa with a knife, there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. I didn't seem suspicious, did I? My clothing was currently casual. It was exactly the type of clothing that a city slicker that viewed the countryside as a wholesome getaway would wear. A camera and a knapsack. Inside were various things needed for hiking. It was still only June, and maybe it was unusual, but the sun was shining down like it was already the middle of summer. Isn't June the middle of summer anyway, bro? Or is it July? Bleh. The fact that I didn't bring a hat must seem odd. No, it wasn't something to be that concerned about. It's alright. I was just a normal tourist. Just normal, man. Was there anything suspicious about me? Asking that as I turned around to look at the bus that was departing. Nani? All the passengers by the window were staring down at me silently. Oh my. They were staring right at me, as if they had seen right through my proud little outfit. Just staring, looking down on me. Countless stares rained down like needles on me from the windows open to air out the bus. All that rained down were stares. None of them were saying a word. But all the more, their silent stares told me more than a million words could. Hurry up and go back to Tokyo, you outsider.
私は
There was no reason for me to speak. My quiet voice was drowned out by the sound of the engine. The bus, as if to torment me, set out slowly, and after doing more than enough to intimidate me, sped off. A thin film of sweat began to rise from my entire body. According to the documents, it was a village that seemed wary of outsiders. Its population was small as well. If they saw an unfamiliar face, they would be quick to identify that face as an outsider. On top of that, nobody else had gotten off at this stop. It was a bus stop that they normally just passed on by. Somebody actually getting off there, there was no doubt that that had drawn some attention. But this wasn't a slip-up. They were the ones who directed me to get off at this stop. There was nothing to worry about. I knew that I was just nervous, since this was my first undercover assignment. My more seasoned colleagues referred to us as the new generation that didn't know how to lose their cool, but that wasn't true at all. In order to calm my breathing down, yes, bitch, I exhaled the unpleasant air residing in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't help but pray that my apprehensions would disappear like the white clouds of exhaust expelled from the bus. There was a small shed there to serve as shelter if it rained, and it was there that I decided to wait. Inside the shed, one wall was plastered with posters advertising the dam opposition efforts. It was like the heartfelt screams of the villagers were recorded on that wall. Inside that shelter, I felt an inexplicable pressure. It wasn't like I had any real relation to the dam project, but it still made me feel hesitant about being inside there. That was just how filled with the force of denial that space was. And inside that uneasy space was a girl. Rika. Inside that shed covered in words written in broad brush strokes berating the police regarding the dam and calling for action, there was a girl sitting there with a drowsy gaze as if half asleep. The two images clashed so much that I could only stand there dumbfounded for a moment, trapped in such a surreal environment. If I stepped inside, who knew what kind of oafish noises I would accidentally make? I couldn't be disturbing this girl's slumber like that. Having thought this, I gave up on entering the shed. It was just a sleeping kid, so why was I so worked up about it? Finally, I realized, this girl, to us as a married couple, was the very image of our ideal child. Even after numerous examinations at the hospital, we didn't know for sure what our child's gender was. That could also be quite insulting if it's a dude. Whether we could tell if they were a boy or a girl was, in the end, dependent on whether or not we could get an image of their genitalia. There was, of course, no guarantee that it was a girl, but with things the way they were, the possibility was high. Even so, Yuki had been saying that the chances that it was a boy or a girl were even. But in my heart, I had already decided that our coming child was a girl. Since the day I decided that until now, it was so fun to imagine how our child would grow up that I couldn't help myself. Amongst those numerous imagined forms, the one that I thought to be the most ideal had materialized right in front of me. Of course, a little of it was due to the circumstances. In my ideal image, her hair would be on the short side. The girl in front of me, though, had long hair. It was almost as if somebody had taken my ideal and made some small adjustments. It certainly wasn't something unpleasant. Even so, what the fuck is this train of thought, bro? Is this how you calm yourself down? Leave the poor kid alone, bitch. Even so, I felt like I was sullying her just by looking at her like this. Stop looking at her then! She had an immaculate, no, a divine air about her. Thought she was crying. That girl with an angelic smile, she did not smile even once, with a yawn wide enough you could see her molars, woke up all of a sudden. I didn't mean to peep. What? But locking eyes with a girl who had just woken up like this somehow made me feel like I was playing a prank on her. I wasn't doing anything shady, but I became flustered. The girl spoke. No, cried out?
Me.
Meep? Like that character on the show with the puppets? With the orange hair? I thought it was just one of those greeting things kids do. So in order to prove that I wasn't a suspicious person, I responded in kind.
Me.
Me.
The fuck?
Me.
Akasaka, stop! Stop! The girl stared at me dubiously with a doll-like expression. Cute, but cold and hard to read. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. There was, after all, an unfamiliar man right in front of her when she woke up who responded with meep when she said the same. Suspicious. She definitely thought I was suspicious.
Me.
Shut the fuck up!
Me?
Shut up!
Mm.
We were both at a loss for words. No, the only one lost was me. The girl in front of me, as if inquiring about my motives, stared at me intently. In this silence, I felt like I was the one who had to say something first. Yes, you dumbass, the adult should probably say something. Damn it, this girl was way better at interrogating somebody than Oishi.
怪しいものじゃないんだ。
Great start.
私は、
みぱ
ニパ
ー。みぱ
What I could have only described as a cold expression suddenly blossomed into a smile, one that soon infected me. You might be familiar with the term angelic smile. To me, it was like that phrase was created just to describe the smile she gave me. The girl smiling while saying Nipa probably wanted me to return the favor in kind. Probably not, though. That's right. This was a kid's form of communication. Having the other person emulate what you just did was a rudimentary form of mutual understanding.
ニパー。
みぱー。
Oh my god, bro. It was a beautiful afternoon in the early summer. It's about to be fucking fall if y'all keep this up! What was I doing?
みぱー。
ニパー。
Whatever the fuck ever, man. This was interesting in its own way. If making somebody happy with just a smile was the work of angels, then this girl was definitely one of them. I couldn't help but pray that my own child, who was soon to be born by the way, would grow up to be like this girl. That strangely gentle moment was finally brought to an end by the arrival of a car. An older person waved at me from the driver's seat, a dry smile plastered on their face.
どうも、こんにちは。遅れて申し訳ないことです。昨日お電話くださった観光の方ですかね。
あ、はい。
お待たせして申し訳ねえ。いや、野良でちょいと遅れましてね。すったらと、お乗りくださいな。天気もまんた崩れそうだから、ちゃけちゃけご案内しますよ。
天気ですか？
ああ、ここいらは崩れると早いよ。今日も夕立になるかもな。そうなったら、ほんと写真さ撮るところじゃなくなるでしょ。ほら、乗って乗って。
Nutty nutty.
み
Turning around, the girl was standing right behind me with an intrigued expression. Her body language somehow reminded me of a stray cat that followed you around after you played with it a little. So charming.
あれ、リカちゃまじゃねえですか。ありがたや、ありがたや。
みぱ
Oh, she probably doesn't know how to speak at this point. It is 5 years earlier than we usually meet her, right? A girl named Rika with an immaculate smile and an old man praising her while rubbing prayer beads in his hands. It was a rather mysterious sight to behold. So, the girl turns her face at me, tilting her head a little in a cutesy manner. After seeing that, the elder introduces me as a tourist who came to sightsee Hinamizawa.
村を観光したい若者なのです。
What? The girl, Rika-chan, said that with a smile as she clung onto my arm.
まあね、この村の自然がとても貴重だと聞いたんで、ぜひカメラに収めたいと思ったんだよ。私はこう見えても、とっても写真撮影が好きでね。
富竹2号なのです。
Okay, so he is already known 5 years prior. Okay, cool.
富竹？
牧野、僕も一緒に行ってはいけませんですか？
そんな、リカちゃまが来ても、面白いことなんかなんもないですよ。
Oh, now you tell me which, go with that.
リカちゃまは、境内でマリ遊びでもしててくださいな。
A distinctly displeased expression creeped across Rika-chan's face. Being able to show one's emotion honestly on their faces was a privilege young children had.
もしお差し支えなければ、この子も連れて行ってあげてください。
When I said those helpful words, another smile spread across Rika-chan's face with another nipa as she clung on to me again. Not bad at all. Nani? I want this girl to call me Papa. Okay, bro, you need to get the fuck back to Tokyo. No. Father. Dad. Daddy. What the fuck? What am I doing? I don't know, but you gots to go, bitch. Ever since I met this girl, I was completely off my game. Just calm down.
かてなかんと。リカちゃまはダメだ言うても聞かんしな。すったらんとお乗りください。ささ、リカちゃまも。
The old man descended from the driver's seat and opened up the sliding door of the van, which had Onigafuchi Alliance Town Council stenciled on the side. Rika-chan brushed me aside and dove into a seat and began bouncing around right away. It seemed like she was thoroughly enjoying the bouncy springs.
かんれリカちゃま。そんじゃお客人が座れねえですよ。やだ、こら、リカちゃま。
Huh, girls are nice. Bro, what the fuck? I wonder if my child will play around like this too. No. It was written in that guide to raising a child that you shouldn't dote on them. Kids are kids. If you don't raise them strictly without spoiling them,
ふかふかでバインバインでニパ
ニパー。
this Akasaka dude is sus, bro. I am definitely going to be a terrible father. It was decided that I would be a doting parent before my child was even born.
さんではお客さん、風景の綺麗そうなとこで適当にご案内しますよ。お昼は食べましたかいね？
ええ、ホテルで軽食を。
そんですか。では参り。
ひなみざわ観光に出発なのですよ。わーいなのです。
君はリカちゃんでいいのかい？
そうなのですよ。フルでリカと言いますです。もう繰り上がりの足し算とかもできますですよ。
ああ、そうなの。それはすごいな。
お指とかは折ってませんですよ。ちゃんと暗算でできますですよ。
The way she insisted upon that was just too cute. At some point, the nervousness I had about being alone in enemy territory had evaporated like it was never there at all. I had to be at least a little thankful that I met this little girl.
じゃあ出発しましょうかいね。Hinamizawa大自然ウォッチング。
The old man stepped on the gas with a great deal of gusto. This fucking bridge. Oh, you're speeding past. Stop photobombing. The old man, who was apparently named Makino, was he the same Makino that was listed as the auditor of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance? Show me— what the hell? You're gonna continue on this sentence just like that? Alright then, shit! Show me around places that were all breathtaking. I, Keanu, relax. Even though I wasn't really here for sightseeing, I couldn't help but be impressed. First of all, this was different from the simple scenery of a city. The scenery of a charming village like this, no matter how mundane it seemed to the villagers, had a tranquil appeal to it. At first, I was only releasing the shutter as part of my tourist act, but midway through, I found myself taking pictures out of pure interest. Tourist traps had their own unique allure to them, but there was nothing like that here. I was especially captivated by the unspoiled nature of the place. If there wasn't that whole uproar over the dam, I would want to bring Yuki here with me some other time. I wanted her to breathe in this fresh air, as well as show her this rejuvenating verdant scenery.
こんなのが面白いのですか？赤坂は変な人なのです。
いや、こういう円筒状の郵便ポストなんて今はとても貴重だよ。どことなく漂うノスタルジックな雰囲気は渋いと思わないかな。
Sir, what's elegant?
ひなみざわは楽しいですか？
まあ、楽しいよ。退院したらぜひ家内を連れてもう一度来たいよ。その時には生まれている子供も一緒にね。今は出産を控えて入院しているんだ。
Oh, Rika-chan knows Akasaka ain't getting out of here.
予定日がもうすぐでね。君みたいな可愛い女の子だといいんだけど。
お客さんはもうすぐおめでたですかいね。そんないけねえよ。奥さん放り出してこんなとこに遊びに来てちゃ。
I was momentarily at a loss for words. It was exactly how Makino said. There was no good reason for a man who was waiting for his wife to give birth to be playing around idly in a place like this. Did I slip up?
ひなみ沢への旅行は前々からの予定だったんで、妻の家族が付き添ってくれているから。
そんなに前から予定してたんなら、もしかめ間に合わんとかいね。いや、そんだったらこんな窮屈な思いさせんと、綺麗な観光バスで回れたのね。
You know how life be sometimes, missed opportunities, I didn't do enough research. It is what it is, it happens. It didn't seem as if Makina was actually digging for anything. But if this conversation continued any longer, it would put some unexpected holes in my cover. I halted the conversation by pretending to take another picture.
じゃあ最後の一番景色のいいとこさ案内しましょうかね。
It was slightly before evening, the sun was still burning brightly, but a cool breeze had begun to mix itself into the air. It seemed my exploration of Hinamizawa with Rika-chan was just about done.
一番景色のいいところですか？
そんなリカちゃま、境内からの景色さを置いて他にはありませんやね。
Hearing that, Rika-chan smiled even more.
では赤坂を僕のお家へご招待なのです。
リカちゃんのお家って。
神社ですよ。古で神社。高台にありましてね。景色さ見られるんですよ。
古で神社。
The girl who called Furude Shrine her home, Rika. If I remembered correctly, her full name was Rika Furude. And Furude was, that's right, one of the three families. Even if the Sonozaki family is said to hold all the actual power, it was still one of the old houses that held some authority. No, more important than that right now was Furude Shrine. If I remembered correctly, Oishi had told me. Within the grounds of the Furude Shrine, there were the offices of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. And since the land around Furude Shrine were private property, the police couldn't set foot in there heedlessly. Furude Shrine, where even Oishi couldn't simply set foot into, the main base of operations for the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, I had been given the unexpected opportunity to enter there. I couldn't have asked for more.
楽しみです。ぜひお願いします。
じゃあ酒々参りましょうかね。天気も少し怪しいですからな。
So you keep saying. The sky had suddenly become overcast. It wouldn't be odd if it started raining soon. The cicadas, as if trying to finish their daily allotment of chirps before the evening, cried out even more fervently. The van stopped in the shrine's parking lot. Also parked there were numerous other vans with loudspeakers mounted on top of them to act as makeshift propaganda vehicles. On the side of each vehicle was scrawled, "The dam project must be demolished. Defend our homeland to the last. No Oyashiro-sama's anger," or a slogan of a similar kind. They gave the feeling that even without using the loudspeakers, there was enough to overwhelm any onlookers. Vertical banners were erected in various places. The contents of those banners were similar. They were all objections against the dam or crude insults towards the government. There were horizontal banners, placards, and so on and so forth. They proclaimed that without a doubt this was the headquarters of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. For Rika-chan, however, this hectic place was also known as her home.
着きましたのですよ。ただいまなのです。
Rika-chan crawled over my lap and exited the vehicle first. Makino had noticed I was looking at the protest banners.
神社はダム反対運動の事務所も兼ねてましてね。こんな風景もあんたらには反安保闘争みてえで懐かしいでしょ。
Student movements against government policies, movement that bordered on terrorist activity, were at one time commonplace, if only in order to garner global attention. Students holding out in lecture halls, brawling with the riot squads that charged in. It was an age where wasting one's youth like that was widely considered a road to glory. It was slightly before my time.
私は別に活動家ではありませんので、普通に学び、普通に卒業しました。国の政策にあのような暴力や立てこもりで対抗しようというのには。
はあ、あんたそれはそれで立派な意見さお持ちだね。
政策に意見したかったら同じ意見の政治家に投票するか、自ら政治の世界に飛び込み正当な手続きを持って意見を主張するべきであると思っています。それが民主政治の原点です。それに暴力で挑戦するなどあってはならないと思います。
For a youngin', you have some fine beliefs there. I saw that feeling of respect reflected in Makino's gaze. At that moment, something tugged at my sleeve.
赤坂が何を言っているのか全然わからないのですよ。
Rika-chan, feeling like she was the only one who didn't understand the conversation, had a look of displeasure on her face. That expression was so charming I had to keep myself from grinning like an idiot. It's often said that a father who wants to spoil her daughter rotten. I think I understood that feeling well. It's often said that a father wants to spoil his daughter rotten. I think I understand that feeling very
ご
well.
めんね。リカちゃんには難しい話だったね。日本は平和の国だから、自分の言いたいことは平和的に訴えなきゃいけない。暴力で訴えてはいけない。ということさ。
No matter how much I explained, a girl who was just boasting about being able to carry digits over when adding things probably wouldn't understand. It probably wasn't something to talk about in front of Rika-chan anyway.
では赤坂、
Oh no.
僕たちの村はどうやったらダムに沈まなくなるのですか？
Even if I regretted my careless words, it was too late now. Here I was at the main headquarters of an organization telling them their way of doing things was illegal. Preaching that violence was not the answer. A complicated feeling had mixed itself in with the respect in Makino's gaze. It was then I finally realized. It wasn't that simple. There wasn't a soul who would argue that what I was saying wasn't correct. Using violence to get one's way was something that everybody knew you shouldn't be proud of. However, right now, Hinamizawa was in a predicament that couldn't be overcome with peaceful means alone. The legality of Hinamizawa Dam Project through the efforts of the various propaganda campaigns enacted by the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was being called into question. If they further strengthened their campaign, they might be able to suspend or change the construction plans. But that was at the most just a possibility. If the government proceeded with the construction as planned, it wouldn't be long before this place was at the bottom of a lake. If it wasn't for the unrestrained resistance of the residents of Hinamizawa, this place might already have been underwater. Bro, like you almost tried to trip me there with unrestrained resistance of the residents. What is this, an Eminem verse?
僕たちはここでしか生きていけないのです。都会では生きていけないのです。
Narrator was spitting. The words of this remarkably young girl were all too accurate, carrying with them the screams of the hearts and minds of the residents of Hinamizawa. Of course, there was nothing I could say to respond to that. I could only respond to Makino and Rika-chan's heavy words with silence.
すみません。よそ者が気安く言えるような問題ではなかったですね。謝罪します。
Makino, unsure of how to reply for a while, could only laugh pointlessly.
お客人たちのようなよそに住んでる方々には関係ねえことです。南沢さん気に入ってくださったんなら、お客人のお友達みんなにも、そういうのが何十年、何百年と広がっていけば、この村さダム底に沈めるなんて、ふざけた計画もやがてはついえるんですかね。
He followed that up with a smile that said, "Please don't think of it too much." Makino letting me not worry that much was really a stroke of good fortune. Becoming infatuated with the idea of making friends with a little girl had made me completely forget my apprehension about being in enemy territory. Being reminded of this right before I was going to step foot into their headquarters might have been a good thing. If we had this exchange in the middle of their office, if there was a short-tempered youth in there, they might have come at me. Thinking of how extreme they were, in the worst case, my life could have been in danger. It seemed that I looked quite despondent at the moment. Makino, thinking he had said something wrong, became flustered trying to think of a way to improve my mood.
本当に軽率なことを言いました。本当にすみませんでした。
そんなにお気にされないでください。
今日案内してもらった村のあちこちはどこもとても美しく素晴らしい場所ばかりでした。もう一度来たいと心底思わされました。そんな美しい村がダムの湖底に沈むことになれば必死の戦いになるのもわかります。
I had somehow managed to use my despondent look to change the topic in my favor. After a bit, Makino had returned to his usual high spirits. It seemed he believed I was completely sympathized with his point of view.
そうそう。そんな話はこれくらいにしましょう。本当にとても景色さいいところがあるんです。
行きましょうですよ、赤坂。
Rika-chan, seemingly happy to be free from all the boring and gloomy adult talk, bounded up to the stone steps. There was no real need to run, but in order to catch up with her, I also darted up the steps. There were several tents belonging to the town council erected on the shrine grounds. Inside the tents were several folding tables and chairs, and a number of the older town council members were livening things up with chit-chat. They weren't saying anything incendiary like the damn project must be destroyed. It was just some relaxed idle chit-chat between local geezers. The normal sort of calming scenery. At the entrance of a shed that looked like a meeting place, there was a large sign erected with Onigafuchi Defense Alliance headquarters written in bold brushstrokes. That was their base of operations. To be honest, it was a bit of a letdown. If you asked me what I had been imagining, this is a bit embarrassing, but I would have thought it would be something much more dramatic. With barbed wire fences and barricades, my first impression of the place, though, was completely different from that. It looked like a simple backwater town hall. It didn't look like anything other than exactly that. The old folks who were chatting had noticed Rika-chan's presence, and
リカちゃまじゃないの。もう子供はお家に帰る時間だよ。
ここは僕のお家なのですよ。
the old folks guffawed, since she wasn't wrong. From that exchange, I could tell that this Rika Furude girl was loved by everybody.
牧野さん、その人
Huh.
電話をくれた観光の人は
そんですよ。こちら村長さんに、HinamizawaのHimeyoshi村長さん。
Really? That's the first time we see him. He smiled brightly, but there was no mistaking he would be scary if he got angry. By the look of things, this old man was the president of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, none other than Kichiro Kimiyoshi himself.
ようこそHinamizawaへ。
Thanks.
いかがでしたか。静かでゆっくりしたところでしょう。
For sure, beautiful.
ええ、今日一日美しい場所をいくつも堪能させていただきました。貴重な機会をお与えくださったことを。
へえ、今時の若い方なのにまた真摯な方だね。
喜一郎、赤坂に見晴らしのいいところを案内したいのですよ。
Thinking that the formalities between myself and the mayor had gone on for too long, Rika-chan butted into the conversation. For her to call the mayor by his first name, I felt that it was a little strange, but none of the villagers seemed to mind. A girl of the Furude household, one of the three families. She was probably different than the average villager.
赤坂、こっちなのですよ。
Rika-chan tugged at my sleeve. Not resisting, I allowed myself to be pulled over. And waiting for me was a magnificent view.
これはすごい。
It was an observation deck that looked down on the village. They, knowing that this was the best view in the entire village, kept quiet as I stood there awestruck. I was holding a camera but had completely forgotten to even glance through the viewfinder. This view, no matter what kind of film it was printed on, it wouldn't be able to show everything. If there was a way to explain it, it would only be what I would be able to put into words. No shit. It was such a breathtakingly spectacular view that I struggled to find a comparison. For a while, I was left awestruck, and I could only stand there in wonder. A cool breeze helped abate the heat rushing through my body. That comfortable sensation also left me speechless. Rika-chan, who had been holding on to my sleeve the entire time, spoke.
僕の一番のお気に入りの場所なのですよ。
As she said that, she showed me another adorable smile. That smile seemed very fleeting. If you ask why, that was because the view from her favorite spot would eventually be submerged under the deep green waters of the dam reservoir.
こんな村が湖底に沈むことになってるなんて信じられないよ。
I said it quietly so that only Rika-chan could hear it. I regretted it as soon as I did, for those words were all too cruel. However, Rika-chan didn't let them cast a cloud on her expression. In fact, she replied with a smile.
沈みませんよ。ダム計画なんて必ずなくなっちゃいますのです。
It was just like a little girl to say something like that. There was no basis for her saying so. It was just her wish.
赤坂はこの村が沈んでしまうと思っていますか？
Correct response here is I hope not.
沈んでほしくなんかないよ。
I knew how important the dam was. I knew that it was necessary. I just didn't want to recognize the sacrifices that would have to be made. I agreed with the project in general, but I couldn't agree with some of the details. But if it meant that this girl's beloved scenery wouldn't be taken away from her, I might be able to object to the dam. I might be able to ignore the interests of the nation, the development of Japan, all for the sake of one girl's smile. I'm not really much of a humanist, but how sentimental of me.
沈みませんよ。ダムの計画はもうすぐなくなりますですから。
Her words weren't just hopes and dreams, but were seasoned with a hint of resolve. As if she was talking about an unchangeably predetermined outcome, as surely as the sun rising in the east.
もうすぐなくなる？
Wanting to ask her why she believed that, I turned around.
はい、なくなりますのですよ。
どうしてそう言い切れるんだい？
それはなのです。
She seemed to want to answer, but as though unable to find the right words, she swallowed back what she was about to say.
赤坂が何をしてもしなくても、ダム計画は今年で終わりになってしまうのです。
Regardless of what Akasaka does?
もう決まっていることなのですよ。
That was a lie. If something like that had already been decided, then the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance would have no reason to continue existing. From my point of view, it was like they were doing nothing more than throwing themselves into an endless battle. If they knew the dam project was cancelled, it would feel much more relaxed around here. This village, though, could hardly be called relaxed. For evidence of that, I just had to remember how charged the atmosphere was at the checkpoint or at the bus stop. The villagers, with their misplaced resolve, were still fighting. And this girl, even knowing the village's grim resolve, had already declared their victory. The villagers throwing themselves into this endless war, and this optimistic girl who said they had already won. That contrast was somehow strange.
どうしてそう思うんだい？何か確信があるなら私に教えてくれないかい？
Rika-chan stayed silent for a while, seemingly choosing what to say.
だって、
だって
She looked like she was lost on whether she should continue or not. As if she was troubled on whether it was okay for her to say it. That kind of expression.
決まっていることなのです。
By whom?
他に言いようがないのですよ。
決まっているって言ったって。
It really is just like a little girl to say something like that. I couldn't believe it was actually true. She was the only one saying such things with such confidence. My real mission that I had forgotten about during this fun-filled day resurfaced at the back of my mind. The kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Had the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance kidnapped the minister's grandson and already succeeded in negotiating the cancellation of the dam project? Did Kimiyoshi actually already know that and was just playing dumb? Was that what this little girl was really telling me?
赤坂
You think she would be privy to that information this quickly? The girl called out my name suddenly.
なんだい？
東京へ帰れ
Oof! Huh? I wasn't only surprised at that sudden command. Ever since I came to this village, I had never once mentioned I was from Tokyo. Well, based on my accent, she might be able to guess where I was from. What was I getting so worked up over? It was probably the sudden and complete change in her demeanor.
あなたはさっさと東京に帰った方がいい
You sound like Mion right now.
でないとひどく後悔することになる
The girl had been holding my sleeve the entire time. She had been tugging at my sleeve since hurriedly dragging me over to show me this wonderful view. But this was the adorable Rika-chan who I had spent the entire day with. There was no way she could have been replaced with a doppelganger when I wasn't looking. She had been holding on to my sleeve this entire time, but somehow this girl was someone other than Rika-chan. She looked like Rika-chan, but she wasn't. She was some girl I had never ever met before. That girl had told me in an indifferent voice that I would eventually regret coming to this village from the bottom of my heart.
それがあまりにもみすぼらしくて今のうちから警告してあげているのです
どうして私が後悔することになると。
いちいちうるさいな
I couldn't believe that I was hearing such cold words come from Rika-chan's mouth. I just couldn't believe it. Was somebody impersonating her, using ventriloquism or something? Thinking that, I wanted to take a look around, but the girl's gaze had me pinned down, making me unable to move.
あなたの親はあなたが赤信号の横断歩道の真ん中にいるときどうして危ないのかを全部説明し終えるまであなたの手を引っ張らないの引っ張るでしょまず歩道まで連れ戻してからなぜ危険なのかを解くでしょつまりはそういうこと
The girl I had spent time with, Rika Furude, would not speak like that. She would speak with a cuteness befitting her age, with brief, childish remarks, expressing her emotions honestly. She definitely wouldn't speak with such pointed words.
警告はした勘違いしないでほしいのは私があなたを嫌いだからこういうことを言ってるわけじゃないってこと死んでもいい人に危険なんかを教える必要はないのだし
君は誰だ？リカちゃんじゃない。
As soon as I accused her of not being Rika-chan, she let out a strange, quiet giggle. It was a laugh not befitting a child of her age. It was like she was possessed by something. Her change was just that total and complete. Was Rika-chan being attacked by some terrifying phenomenon? That occult idea came to mind without any sort of hesitation. Rika-chan is acting strange. Somebody help! Thinking that I would yell that, I turned to where the mayor was. And I immediately realized he was looking at us with a smile. That's right. To him, it looked like nothing more than me and Rika-chan just fooling around. He didn't notice that there was something terrifying happening to her.
赤坂の怖がり
The girl had obviously grasped that I was afraid. Noticing that and calling me a coward, she laughed again. That cackling girl, approaching me in a strange manner while still laughing, lost her balance and fell flat on her face. What? Rika-chan fell down. She was being possessed. If it was just a while before, I would have extended a hand to help her up without hesitation. But now, extending a hand to this ominous girl who looked like Rika-chan but wasn't required a bit more courage than I had at the moment. The girl cried out thus. She then squirmed upright and dusted herself off. Afterwards, she looked around restlessly as a blank expression crept across her face. You got to be shitting me. Was she making fun of me? That way of acting, it was as though, after being possessed by something, she had lost her memories of what happened.
冗談だろリカちゃん
Me.
I don't know if Rika-chan had heard me or not. She just cried out like that, as if questioning herself.
お客人、リカちゃまもお茶が入りましたよ。塩大福もあるからにぜひ食ってきんさいな。
An old lady wearing a smock was waving energetically from the entrance of the office. Hearing that there were snacks, Rika-chan's expression changed.
わーいなのです。
A carefree smile. That was a familiar smile, one that belonged to the embodiment of my ideal daughter. Any hint of the creepy girl that was just there, spouting sinister words, had vanished.
ほら、リカちゃま。手を洗ってきんさいね。バッチおててにゃ食わせるまんじゅうありんせんね。
Manju.
ちゃんと洗いますですよ。みー。
Rika-chan responded with vigor, running off to the washing station that was along the side of the office. She stopped halfway there, turning around to call to me.
早く来ないから、僕は赤坂の分までおまんじゅうが食べられてホクホクなのです。
うん
お手手を洗わない人はおまんじゅうが食べられないのですよ。
No matter how you looked at it, that was Rika-chan. Those words and the way she said them, no matter how you heard them, they were definitely Rika-chan's.
ほんでお客人、大人なんだからお手本を示してやってくださいな。
The old lady urged me to wash my hands. Without any resistance, I lined up beside Rika-chan at the wash station. Splish, splash. I stared at Rika-chan, intent on washing her hands properly, like she had probably learned at school.
みー、間違っていますか？
間違いって
僕のお手手の洗い方です。金シールを4個しかもらったことないです。
Aw.
僕はお手手を洗うのがきっと下手なのですよ。
間違ってなんかないよそれだけしっかり洗えてれば十分だよ
それだけではダメなのですよ。あ、ちゃんとたわしを使って爪の間の赤も落とさないと金シールはもらえないのです。
リカちゃんは真面目で偉いな
ニパー、赤坂に褒められましたのです。
No matter how you looked at it, it was Rika-chan. There was no trace of that girl from before. Exactly what was that sinister girl?
リカちゃんさっきのあれはどういう意味だいさっきリカちゃんは私に東京へ帰れってそう言っただろ
言いましたのですか？
I was at a loss for words. She didn't remember what that girl had just said? Like I would ever believe something as occult as that could happen. Like I would ever believe that Rika-chan could be possessed by that strange girl and say those creepy things.
リカちゃんが確かにそう言ったよ
みー。
Her expression told me that, despite my saying so, she had no idea, and you should probably drop it. She wasn't playing dumb, she actually didn't know. Exactly what was that just now? Just as Rika-chan had, I let a look of confusion creep across my face. The two of us, both looking like we had no idea what was going on, must have certainly been a humorous sight to behold. While partaking of tea and snacks, I was shown a propaganda film shot by the Defense Alliance that highlighted their resistance efforts. Older folks talked passionately on how long and grueling the fight against the dam was, but they fell on deaf ears. I was transfixed by Rika-chan, who had heard these stories countless times before and was nodding off. Eventually, Rika-chan noticed I was staring at her and smiled as she rubbed her eyes. That smile was Rika-chan's after all. There was no hint of that sinister shadow. After that, my unreasonable fear of Rika-chan lessened with the passing of time, but I could by no means forget what had happened. It eventually grew dark. The mayor said that they had prepared dinner, but I said I would come again tomorrow and took my leave. I had to return to the hotel and file my regular report with the section chief.
そうですか。では、また明日もぜひいらっしゃい。お電話さくれれば、すぐに迎えを出しますんでね。
ご好意感謝します。ぜひ明日も遊びに来ようと思います。
ええ、さしてあげてくださいな。あんた、レイカちゃまに大層気に入られたみたいだしね。
赤坂は明日も来ますですか？明日は5次元で終わりですから、3時くらいに来てくれると嬉しいのですよ。
Please come again. That pure smile urged me to do so. There wasn't a trace of that evil aura. Depending on what happened next, all that might end up as nothing other than my hallucination. Thinking about it logically, if the daughter of the Furude household, one of the three families, had taken a liking to me, then this was a strong foothold for my investigation from here on out. It was like a free ticket for a reason to visit Hinamizawa. If only I could treat that little incident as a figment of my imagination, then having this girl who was the embodiment of my ideal daughter grow so attached to me wasn't bad either. I had successfully dove into the belly of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance and had the mayor as well as the other important members of the alliance welcome me with open arms. This was a great turn of events. However, I still felt uneasy. Getting back to the hotel, I forced down an almost painfully cold beer until I could clear my mind. The shock from that incomprehensibly strange incident continued to torment me. The sound of the car grew closer, followed by the sound of it braking as the engine cut out. At that moment, his up until now lackadaisical footsteps grew decisive as the man in the room dashed up to the wall beside the window and carefully peered outside. It was his comrade's car. Even so, he still didn't relax his guard. Eventually, the sound of the footsteps approached the door. Thump, 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 thump. It was the passcode.
帰ってきたね。開けちょくれな。俺だ。ああ、お疲れ。今開ける。
After the locks were undone and the door opened, a man appeared, his arms laden with swollen plastic grocery bags. The bags in his hands had 7 Smart written on them, with bread and milk cartons able to be glimpsed within. The contents of those bags were then spread out over a sheet on the floor.
カップラーメン買ってきちゃう。お湯沸かせな。小僧はどうしてる？
It looks like the teas are expensive for this dude as well.
ん？ずっと寝てる。手がかからなくて助かるよ。うんこ垂れるときは騒ぐけどな。漏らさせんな。弁臭は万一のとき、やばいって。わかってるよ。猿グツワは定期的にチェックな。外れてもまずいん。きつくも締め付けちゃあん。窒息させたら意味がなん。わかってるって。あれ、携帯コンロのガス管頼まなかった？もうガスねえよ。聞いてねえ。ダハ。マジかよ。ついてくれよ。くそ。
He rattled the portable stove as he struggled to get it to light. Seeing that, the man who went to buy supplies let out a deep sigh. And with a backwards glance at that sight, began to walk to the corner of the room. The kidnapped boy was sprawled out on a sheet that was spread out on the floor.
小僧、元気かいね。
Of course, the man didn't assume the kid would be able to hear that question. That was because the boy's ears were plugged, with his eyes and ears thoroughly covered by packing tape. Also, his mouth was gagged with a thin, twisted-up towel. Because of that, the boy was unable to close his mouth properly, his cheeks sticky with his own saliva. Of course, that wasn't the only reason. Both his arms were tied tightly behind his back with a leather belt.
今んところ、順調らし。命の心配はない。お前のじいさんがしぶりよったん。耳たぶの一つも切り落とさなきゃならんかったんけ。本家はこうと決めたら、鬼やんね。どんな残酷なこと命令するかも想像つかん。その本家が、小僧に傷一つつけるな言うてんから。とにかく。
大臣はダム計画を撤回で水面下工作。Hinamizawaダム計画は無期凍結へ。小僧の解放はいつ頃になるんだろうな。早く一服したいもんだぜ。
本家が決着のタイミング測ってるだし。いつになるかはあらんが、近いうちやんな。
よかったな小僧。もうじき解放されるぞ。
The men didn't know if their voices were heard by the boy. For him, there was nothing he could do but continue to sleep to escape his harsh reality.
それよん、ガスをどうするんね。ラーメン食えんよ。ガス切れたなら言うてえな、もう。
The weather forecast had predicted that it wouldn't rain at all this entire week. It's not that I hate sunny days or anything. When every day is the same, unchanging sunny weather, however, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. God damn, that was a lot of commas, wasn't there? Fucking hell. If it's simply clear skies for a week, a month, a year, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two, yeah, I mean? The weather specialist said that they had carefully scrutinized a large quantity of past data, so it wouldn't be so likely for the forecast to be wrong. I knew as much. But even then, there was occasionally a day where I was hoping that it would be wrong as I stared up into the clear blue sky. Was I being mischievous in hoping so? I waited and waited, feeling almost suffocated by the boring blue sky, undisturbed by a single cloud. If you could die from that suffocating feeling, then the population of Earth probably wouldn't have increased to this point. In other words, the only person who was being suffocated by this was me. And so, I welcomed the summer evenings where not even the weather forecast could predict a sudden shower. If I were to explain it like this, would you understand a bit more about how I feel? Let's say tonight's dinner was going to be curry rice, right? But when you called down to the dinner table, what was waiting for you was instead an eggplant with bell pepper stir fry. This is just on your mother's whim, by the way. I would be delighted by such whimsiness. I don't really like eggplants or bell pepper, but still, I would be delighted. The fact that the pre-established routine of curry rice had been broken would be amusing. If tonight was repeated 100 times and 100 times you had to eat curry rice, yet for just this one night, that was changed to an eggplant and bell pepper stir fry, there is no way you couldn't enjoy that chance happening. I hate pre-established routines. I really hate when things are all decided beforehand. I have no love for boredom. I always get my hopes up that something today will be different from yesterday, no matter how trivial. It's been decided that this entire week starting today was going to be clear skies. The weather forecast decided upon it, so the god of weather must also feel obliged to do so. But who's to say that a rain cloud might not just show up one day on a whim? It's something that nobody can say for sure, but because that thought remains in this world, a creature such as myself can continue living without being suffocated. Tomorrow will probably be a hot and clear day. However, I'm the only one that knows that predetermined fate, even with but a slim 1% chance, sometimes changes. Hoping for that 1%, I hung upside down weather charms on my sunlit eaves throws. In the end, I spend my days waiting for those unexpected things in life to happen. I pondered why I was hoping for it. Why was I hoping for a rain cloud? Because you were bored. The answer was simple. I had my fill of clear skies. Then why was I hoping for a rain cloud? I'll take snow too. The answer was simple. The fact that it was going to be sunny tomorrow was boring. So why was I hoping for a rain cloud? In the end, it doesn't really fucking matter whether it rains or shines tomorrow. Basically, it was just the rain that would water my heart, which was withered from boredom. That's why, rather than a TV drama where the plot's already been decided, I prefer to look up at the sky.
だいぶ血圧も良くなってきましたよ。そのお年でこれだけの回復力があるのは、いやいや、感服するばかりです。お嬢さんなら100でも200でも元気にお過ごしになれますね。
The young doctor in his medical coat said that as he undid the blood pressure cuff from the arm of the old woman tucked away in her futon.
入江の先生は本にお上手で。
What? That's a new sprite.
身体な死に損ないは早うしなんと若者の邪魔になっていけんね。
Oh, only here, huh? Okay. The old lady, Oreo, laughed faintly with a broad smile on her face. Then, turning toward the sliding door, she called out in a strong voice.
しみこさん、かたえこさんおらんね。入江先生に麦茶でも入れてやりゃな。
The sound of rushed footsteps from the hallway drew closer, until finally the door slid smoothly open. What it revealed was a young girl. It looked like the old lady's granddaughter.
しみこさんは今日はもう上がっちゃったよ。何かよ。
Huh.
みよ、入江の先生に麦茶を入れたってんな。
うん、了解。抹茶も飲む？紅茶の方がいい？砂糖もミルクもたっぷり？
わしが加減するから入れんでええんね。砂糖壺とミルクも一緒に持ってきてんな。
はいはい。
The girl named Mion, after giving a rather uninterested response to her taskmaster of a grandmother, returned to the hallway.
先生の麦茶は来客用のガラス茶碗に入れるんよ。ちゃんとお座布団もつけてな。水滴もちゃんと拭き取っとくんね。
待ってるって、うっさいな。
A tired voice wafted a reply from down the hallway. The apathetic tone of voice was far from unusual. The old lady let a wry smile slip across her face as she chided the girl.
しょうがないやっちゃな。叱られるうちがはなんねえ、なんたく。
お嬢さん、まあ、そこまでは言わなくても、ミオンちゃんも若いなりに頑張ってますから。
あれの母親もな、しょうがないやっちゃったんね。よう似とる。
で、その母親の母親もまたそっくりなんじゃないですか?
The old lady burst out laughing. Her expression showed that she hadn't taken the comment the wrong way.
入江先生。
Shut the fuck up.
申し訳ない。症状開けてもらえんけんね。風が涼しそうだわ。
The cool chirping of the Higurashi had at some point started leaking through the gap in the doorway. Irie stood up and opened the door up a bit. Or all the way through, you know what I'm saying? A refreshing breeze pushed out the stale air that had built up in the room.
日中はだいぶ暑くなったように思うんですが、まだ朝夕は涼しいですね。夕べは少し肌寒いくらいでした。
そんな朝夕もまたHinamizawaのいいところな。
Idiot replied with a smile as he returned to sit on the cushion beside the old lady. And then the two of them, for a little while, soaked in the voices of the Higurashi.
わしゃ100まで生きにせ。もうしばらくは死ねんよ。ダムの件。
国が一度決めたことを撤回するのはなかなか難しいでしょうね。
国のやることはな、いつの世も一周す回すみたいなもんね。そんでもだいぶ重いやっちゃ。
石臼ですか？
知らんねか、石臼。
Idiot quickly affirmed that of course he knew what the old lady was talking about. For he knew full well that Oreo didn't like having her stories interrupted.
国の石臼はな、なんでもゴリゴリ引いちまう。大したもんよ。でもな、簡単には回らない。重い石臼なんねんな。たくさんの人間がせーのってやってようやくじりじりと動き出す。そんな石臼なんよ。
Idiot pursed his lips, listening quietly to what she was saying. Eventually, Mion returned with some tea laid out on a tray. Seeing that Oreo was talking and in a good mood, she quietly knelt down and laid out the sets for the barley and black tea, careful not to interrupt.
だから一度回り始めたら簡単には止められんね。回し始める一番初めが一番重い。それが嫌だからみんな手を休めんとゴリゴリ回し続けるんね。
摩擦係数の話でしょ。確かにバッチャの話、理屈はあるね。
ちゅうことはだ。何かの間違いで突然石臼が止まっちまったら、また回すにはどえらい力がかかる。
確かに一度中断した計画をもう一度動かすのに必要なエネルギーはかなりのものでしょうね。
簡単には止められん石臼だけどな。一度止めれば二度とは回らん。そういう石臼よ。
石臼を止めるいい手があればいいんですがね。
When Idiot responded with that, Mion and the old lady suddenly sunk into silence. Idiot, instinctively thinking that he had said something rude, searched in a small panic for the words to correct himself. But that silence wasn't the result of rude words. For what crept across Mion and the old lady's faces were contemptuous smiles. Oh, y'all got the giggles, huh? Okay, it's time for me to leave. The atmosphere surrounding Irie suddenly froze, leaving him flabbergasted. Thinking that the scornful smiles creeping across both their faces was the result of some mistake of his, he could only grow afraid. It hadn't been that long at all since he was enveloped by silence. However, unable to stand it, Irie could only let out a weak laugh. Irie's laugh eventually spread to Mion and the old lady. Not knowing exactly what they were laughing at, their laughter left a lingering chill. The only ones not laughing were the Higurashi, who continued their simple and unchanging chorus. And with that, we're gonna call it an episode. Next episode, we continue on of Higurashi When They Cry. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, man. I'm out of here. Love y'all and deuces.